You're watching Asia Tonight. Let's get back to the troubled Adani Group. Now, many are now looking to distance themselves from the Indian conglomerate. And this includes the government, as you heard, which says it has nothing to do with the issue. Remember, this started with a highly critical report by short seller Hindenburg Research. S&P Dow Jones Indices says it is going to drop a group flagship Adani Enterprises from the widely used sustainability indices from Tuesday. That's likely to blunt its appeal to environment-conscious investors. India's National Stock Exchange has put 3 of the group's stocks, including Adani Enterprises, under additional surveillance. The country's central bank has also asked local lenders for details of their loans to the group. Financial institutions around the globe are also checking the exposure to the beleaguered conglomerate. Citigroup, Credit Suisse and Barclays, they are among those looking at how to curb the risk of losses. India's biggest lender, the State Bank of India, says it will evaluate further financing to the group's projects on their own merit. SBI added its exposure to Adani made up 0.9% of its total loan book. At the same time, 2 of the big 3 ratings agencies have weighed in. Fitch Ratings says there is no immediate impact on the group's credit profile, but it is monitoring developments. And Moody's says Adani's stock plunge could hurt the group's ability to raise debt. But like Fitch, it says its ratings on Adani have not changed. Well, Adani shares have been gripped by a massive sell-off since Hindenburg released that report, with Gautam Adani knocked further down the global rich list. And Tim Buckley, Director of Climate Energy Finance, joins us now. A former head of research at Citi, Tim, has also been studying the Adani Group for years. Well, Tim, thanks for joining us this evening. Our Fitch is saying that it is not moving its ratings on Adani yet, but it is watching closely. Is the company still at risk of downgrade by the ratings agencies?
Categorically, yes. If any of the allegations are proven, they will be categorically downgraded by everyone. If the company continues to just ignore the allegations and there is no attempt by the regulators to actually resolve these allegations one way or the other, yes, there are inevitably going to be downgrades, because the Adani Group's accounts have been, up until now, taken with the integrity you would expect of a major conglomerate globally, a significant company globally, but with the accusations of fraud, of auditor malfeasance, of stock lending from Hindenburg, those accusations stand. And until they're resolved, the global financial markets access for the Adani Group is pretty well shut overnight as of the start of this week. So, yes, I think there is clearly a long way to go further on this.
Yeah, Tim, there's been criticisms that the group is over-leveraged, and not just from Hindenburg. So how will this now affect, funding for all its ambitious growth plans, and how badly has this affected Adani's avenues to raise money?
Yes, the Adani Group has prided itself on expanding in all directions simultaneously and at a speed of knots that would stagger any other company. That expansion plan will effectively be on hold as of the start of this year. The company can claim otherwise, but the reality is, when they have raised half their debt out of Wall Street over the last 4 years, and Wall Street is now closed to them until they resolve successfully these accusations, then at the end of the day, the company has no ability to access the Wall Street funding, and so they are going to have to put on hold their expansion plans to all intents and purposes, because the biggest issue is going to be, as they progressively have to refinance their existing debts, they are going to find it harder and harder to actually find financial institutions still willing to extend exposure, whilst allegations of fraud, manipulation and so on from Hindenburg remain unresolved.
Well, in its 413-page rebuttal against Hindenburg, Adani has accused it of attacking India. And given the potential spillover impact on, public banks, Indian stocks, the financial system, are there legs to this argument? And what kind of impact could this have on the broader Indian economy?
Yeah, there are implications for India, but yes, Gautam Adani has wrapped himself in the Indian flag. At the end of the day, one of the major accusations by the Hindenburg Group is crony capitalism, that the Adani Group has been above the law in India. They've been able to extract contracts and concessions from the Indian government that are not available to anyone else or almost anyone else. And certainly crony capitalism is a core part of the problem. But is this an attack on India? No, it's an attack on a billionaire, someone who was, until a week ago, the third richest man in the world, for claims of fraud, stock market manipulation, deception, you name it, every accusation. And so those accusations are in no way an attack on India. They're an attack on the Adani Group and their integrity. And so at the end of the day, no matter what Adani says, they're not the ones who are actually going to be able to substantiate the claims against the group. We really need an independent of integrity and clarity who's going to come in and somehow resolve this. Now, I would have thought that was the Indian regulator. The regulator is going to have to step in at some point. The government of India really can't stand there and say it's not their problem. It is. They've had multiple number of inquiries into the Adani Group over the last decade, and yet none of those inquiries have ever seen the light of day or been resolved to the financial markets requirements. So at the end of the day, there is going to have to be an accountability. The regulator, the government is going to have to step in to resolve these accusations, because it's not up to Adani. Their auditors have been called out. Their transparency and disclosure has been called out quite substantially. This is an accusation of the biggest fraud in world history. I don't think Gautam Adani standing there saying he didn't do anything wrong is really going to appease the market.
Yeah, Tim, corporates attacked by short sellers in Asia generally haven't ended well. Commodity trader Noble Group comes to mind. Is Adani at risk of going the same way? And also, we know that this is not the first time they've been accused of stock manipulation. So what's going to happen to Adani then?
Well, I think we can take a lesson out of some of the accusations that have been levelled in America and in Germany. There were accusations of fraud that the regulator in Germany, that the regulator was asleep at the wheel. And of course, the company denied everything, denied. But in the end, the company went bankrupt. Likewise, a number of Hindenburg's targets in the past have been absolutely smashed by the accusations, and those accusations have been largely found to be true. So at the end of the day, it comes down to, is there truth or not in the accusations? And it was raised in the Indian Parliament 2 years ago that there was a multi-billion-dollar stake in a foreign country that had strategic assets, ownership of assets in India, and either they were undisclosed foreign investor in India, or they were the Adani Group. Hindenburg has claimed that they are the Adani Group, and I think the resignation of Boris Johnson's brother sort of highlights the nature of that instrument. It's pretty clear that a number of the Hindenburg accusations look pretty well substantiated. So it's going to be very difficult for Gautam Adani to get out of this. And I think globally, financial investors are going to be exceptionally careful, having been conned, according to Hindenburg, for a number of years, a decade. They're going to be exceptionally careful going forward. And the claims of greenwash, the removal by S&P Dow of the Adani Group, Adani Enterprises out of the sustainability index, it's just the first shot. At the end of the day, Adani is the largest private developer of new fossil fuel projects in the world, particularly coal, but also LNG, particularly coal power plants, for example. So at the end of the day, the idea that they have been doing anything other than greenwash is ludicrous. And so that, amongst other things, the SEC has said they will call out, and they think greenwash is a form of investor fraud. That's the SEC's words. That's the US comptroller of the US currency. So at the end of the day, there's pretty serious accusations there.
Well, thank you so much, Tim Buckley there. He's Director of Climate Energy Finance. Well, Well, as the assault on his conglomerate continues, Gautam Adani has seen his net worth plunge by $58 billion in just 6 trading days. Bloomberg News says the hit to his wealth is among the most severe in scale and in speed since it began tracking billionaires in 2012. Now, Adani's net worth peaked at $150 billion in September, and it stood at $119 billion before the Hindenburg report was released. From there, it's nearly halved to $61 billion currently, while Forbes puts it at nearly $62 billion. The precipitous fall highlights how fast the 60-year-old tycoon climbed up the wealth rankings in the past 2 years. Many of the tactics that were flagged by Hindenburg as to its alleged fraud are well known. A large concentration of insider share ownership, wide use of leverage and valuations that were elevated by almost every measure. Adani has expanded his conglomerate aggressively, in particular pushing into green energy and infrastructure, securing investments from firms including Warburg Pincus and Total Energies. Well, Adani Group also used margin loans to fund its ambitions. Last week, it had to put up about $300 million worth of shares to maintain its collateral cover on a loan made by a group of banks, including Barclays. It has repeatedly denied Hindenburg's allegations, calling the report bogus, and is threatening legal action.